certain things that they don't know as far as certain conditions that have lingering effects like Alzheimer's. But I think what we need to do is we need to look at how we can try a new approach that incorporates also some new vocabulary, and then later we'll actually get into a track that we put together for you. So the next area I'd like to focus on is just some of the vocabulary words. So Dave, let's visit about that with, and we all know that as we started this business and as we talk, consumers have certain reactions, and certainly there's a negative reaction when you say the word nursing home. So a new vocabulary term that you may want to consider is talk about extended care or care over an extended period of years. In doing so, when you bring it up that way, it may have people say, well, what do you mean by that? They all know the term nursing home, but they may not know the term extended care. And this allows you then to educate them about the subject and how it impacts their loved ones. And it puts you more being proactive than necessarily having to react to a negative term such as nursing home. Many, many years ago, of course, you know, those of us who've been in this business for some time, we know that fear was a great motivator, and maybe to some extent you could still say that people do fear the idea of receiving care or going into a facility. But I'd like to substitute the word fear and emphasize a new word, consequences, and talk to those that you are in front of about consequences. It may be, the first consequence could be the emotional and physical well-being of a loved one, how it's impacted. But again, it helps to bring up a new vocabulary to introduce this topic. Paying for care, how it disrupts plans to keep future commitments. What are the consequences associated with that? Also, the third bullet point, when we refer to as sick, that's kind of a tired and overused term, I believe. And so talk to folks about this idea that, you know, what could compromise their health. Compromise is a powerful word when it's used in the context of educating those with no prior experience. And I think that if you were to say to someone and let them know if they were severely compromised, he or she is no longer safe. And so you can then talk about some of the unintended consequences associated when their health is compromised. Again, the second to last bullet point, retirement. That's also a term that, you know, now really there is no set retirement anymore with folks. It's not like, you know, people basically work for X number of years and suddenly they say, I'm in retirement. So instead of talking to them about their retirement years and how their health could change, talk to them about into the future. Let's look into the future. And then finally, the aspect of beliefs versus fact. I think people are more logical in the way that they buy today, less emotional, and I think it's important that we actually use the facts. And to some degree, as I said, it doesn't mean we don't use some of those good old statistics, but I think just talking to people logically about how you would pay for this and dealing with the math, that's a factual. So let's talk about a track that we can actually help you to incorporate the truth that we talked about, but more focused on consequences. And this is something that Dave will make available to you after the webinar. It'll also be on the recorded webinar just so you have a copy of it. So let's go through this PowerPoint as a generic way that you can bring up the topic of long-term care. So we'll call it LTC planning, starting the conversation. And as we do that, we'll focus a little bit on that truth. So Dave, the very first visual that we come to is talking about why long-term care planning. And we help people understand that today more than ever, LTC planning is a key component of any financial plan. And you can incorporate some of that vocabulary into the future. You can talk to them about extended care. In other words, just begin to substitute words that would be more, have more of a different ring than some of the traditional things that maybe someone else might be talking to your prospects about or that they've heard in the past. So let's go on to the next visual and talk about some of the differences between need-based versus desire-based selling. And so we need to recognize the difference between need-based and desire-based selling. We don't always buy what we need, but we almost always buy what we want. Just ask any man around the Super Bowl time if they actually needed that new big screen, flat screen, 65-inch TV. No, but they wanted it. And we tend to react that way with a lot of different products. So the key to selling long-term care insurance is having a prospect that wants long-term care insurance. And so you can begin by posing the question, asking Bob or Mary what their wants and desires are. And as we go through, you can then see how we'll unfold and get them to want long-term care. So the very next visual focuses in on what are those wants and what are those desires. Certainly the home, the money, their family. Those are either things that they want to have or things that they desire to have. And in the case of the home, staying in it and not going to a nursing home, not having to leave what they maybe have enjoyed for 30 years or 40 years. And also, perhaps, if they have not planned ahead, that home could be jeopardized in terms of not being able to pass it on to their heirs because it may need to be liquidated if their care needs got to the point where they needed the equity in the home. Their money, whether it's 401k, IRAs, savings, annuities, not outliving their savings, passing it on to their heirs. There's a great quote that it was in a Shakespearean play, Macbeth, and I'll give you kind of the English, or our English version, not the Old English version of how it goes. It says, the good that men and women do lives after them, but the good that they intended to do is always buried with them. Most people have intentions, but unfortunately, a lot of people who've not planned ahead, those intentions are never realized because of these consequences of needing care. And of course, their family, not being a physical, financial, and emotional burden. That mere fact that 43 million Americans are caregivers lets us know how important it is that we help individuals to want or desire long-term care by planning ahead so that they can maintain their independence and avoid actually spending down those assets and ending up on government assistance. Let's go on, Dave, to the next visual, and let's talk about how we can very simply, in a three-step process, engage the client in a discussion on long-term care. So number one, what you need to make sure of when you're having this conversation is that you have to establish that the client believes that he or she could live a long life. You know, we know that longevity, that according to Ken Dykewald, who is one of the leading gerontologists in the country, he says that 2/3 of everyone who's ever lived past the age of 65 is alive today. That's astounding. Think about that. Let me repeat that. 2/3 of everyone who's ever lived past the age of 65 in the history of the world is alive today, because throughout all of history, most people didn't age. They, in fact, died. But yet we see the power of longevity, and knowing that at some point into the future, they could become frail or sick and need some form of a time frame associated with extended care. Step two, we have to establish that providing this care is going to have serious consequences for the individual's family and finances. That's important. Talk to people about consequences and how they're impacted. Number three, it must be established that nothing will pay for care other than assets and income allocated for retirement or LTC insurance. So in many cases, as you know, when you're talking to folks about long-term care, they think that these retirement dollars can do 10 different things. They can buy them that second home. They could buy the motor home. They could pay for all the travel that they want to have, and they don't realize that, you know, assets and income that we've allocated for retirement may have to be reallocated for long-term care without planning ahead and without purchasing insurance. So it's a very simple process just to help you. So let's open the question in the next visual this way. I need to talk to you, Bob and Mary, about the consequences that living a long life and needing care over a period of years will have on your, on either one of you or your children and your retirement portfolio, which was never allocated to pay for it. See, that's important that you need to establish, because right now they might be, when you entertain that question, when you ask about what they've allocated from their, from their retirement to handle long-term care, they'll say, "Oh, I really haven't allocated anything." But in actuality, they've really allocated all of it, because without a plan, they're leaving all of those dollars exposed. Going on, have you or someone you know had a prior experience? We still believe today that when you're having the long-term care conversation, that establishing the need and that recognition of the need is still one of the most powerful ways that we can get people engaged in this topic. And people who've had experiences seem to be raising their hand much quicker than those that we have to work harder to get them to recognize the importance of long-term care. But when it hits home, that's very important. So so in the next visual, when we're talking about prior experience discussion, these are a set of questions, if you will, or statements that will enable you to just go a little deeper. See, it's not enough just to say, have you had the experience? What you want to do is you want to drill down. You want to take people back to what I call the valley of their pain. Because if it was a personal experience of someone close to them, and you ask them what happened, how long did the illness last, who provided the care, where was that care received, what impact did it have on the care providers, what impact did it have on the family finances, did he or she understand the consequences not having a plan would have on this family and retirement portfolio? You want to take people back to that valley of their pain so that you can resurface something that may have been, not only a financially painful experience, but emotionally and psychologically that perhaps that individual went through with someone close to them. So as we go on in starting the conversation, if they don't have any prior experience, then the next visual helps us, because I need to tell you what taking care of my blank, my mom, my dad, did to the emotional, physical, financial well-being of my family. Your personal stories can be very impactful, but it's always very important to tell their story first, or to listen to their story first before you actually tell your story. And then you can say, many of my clients have gone through this situation in their families, and it's been devastating to them. And if you have a third-party story, then obviously you can tell that story as well. So as we talk about this, we want to focus on what toll it took on those who provide the care, how long the illness lasted. Again, you've got to help people get it back into their veins that this was something that was painful, it was something that hurt the family financially, and it was something that impacted them in a negative way, so that they can, again, with that recognition, or if you're establishing it with a third party, that they will know just how important, again, long-term care could be if they had a plan. That last bullet point is very interesting. Always people think that someone else will pay for their care when they need it, especially the government. So the emotional impact, as we go on, is the subject that we're talking to them about today. Is we're not trying to get them focused on long-term care insurance. We're talking about long-term care. And this is a very important statement that I'm going to share with you next. I think it will help you in your conversations. Reasonable people don't insure against the risk of an event happening to them. They insure against the negative consequences to those they love. The question is not who will take care of you when you live a long life and need care. It's what providing that care will do to your family and to your retirement portfolio and how it will impact you. So the question is not who will take care of you when you live a long life and need care. It's what providing that care will do to your family and retirement. Again, their family, their nest egg, their money, those are three wants and desires that we need to always bring them back to. It will help. Because the financial impact of long-term care, as you all know, and this is part of the telling the truth, is very expensive. The next visual shows us just what the cost of care is. And I know that all of us who've been in this business for some time this continues to just amaze us at how care has risen and how we've seen the continued projected cost of care in the future, to where someone who just needs a little bit of assistance could be very impacted financially, in many cases devastated, let alone if they had a lingering condition such as Alzheimer's that could last 10 years at a rate of $85,000 a year. And that's today. So that $250,000 projected in 30 years, you might be talking to someone in their 50s who doesn't think their life or health is going to change, for 20 or 30 years. So it's a good reminder, and again, it's good to incorporate truth into our conversation. Just we need to realize that if we think telling all of the truth is, with every statistic that's available, is going to convince people, it isn't. We have to know how to navigate these important facts into the conversation, and to remind people about who really pays the bill for long-term care. And we know that that long-term care is the single biggest unplanned, unfunded liability that they're ever going to face. And right now, it's an unfunded liability that the government's facing, because Medicaid was never intended to be the primary payer, but by this visual, which is even 2008, and I'm sure the numbers, it's always hard to get the most current numbers, but that's about as current as we've seen. That lets you know that still nearly one-half of all the bill is being paid when people have actually spent down their resources and ended up on government assistance, losing control, losing choice, and ultimately having to lose all of their money in order to get care. So we've not yet discussed insurance. We've been really, in our conversation, if you've noticed, we've been just talking about the topic of long-term care. We're creating that desire to help them find a solution. So the next question as we go forward is, let's take a look at some of those particular questions. What is your plan should you ever become frail, or if your health should change and you need an extended amount of care for an extended amount of time? Where would you like your care to be delivered? These are conversations that it seems like if we're out selling long-term care that we would always bring up, but sometimes we overlook the little things. Who do you think would provide your care? Have you discussed it with them? What impact do you think providing care to you will have on your emotional, physical, and financial well-being? So again, we're trying today just to help you to look at the conversation a little bit differently, to maybe incorporate some new questions that you have not considered that will help you become more effective in your sales efforts. So as we look to the solution, we can look to the next visual here and get some insights. So Dave, next visual, if you wouldn't mind, please. Thank you. It's now time for the solution. So you ask family members or friends. We know that basically the concept is really straightforward about how people look for a solution. Either there is retention, there is transfer. In some cases, people are mistakenly of the belief that they can avoid certain risks, just living, a good, healthy life, that they can avoid anything bad ever happening to them. So we help people to kind of process that and to know that, generally speaking, in today's marketplace, selling long-term care, we know transferring 100% of the risk is a fallacy. Very hard, given the price of premiums today, to do that. But the polar opposite of that is to tell someone, hey, you've saved enough money. You can retain 100% of this risk. So generally speaking, what I believe when you're looking towards a solution, you're looking to find a way to help them to see how they can co-insure this risk between retention and transfer and find that happy medium. So Dave, let's go on to the next visual and another important statement. Mr. Smith, you told me that it was important to stay in your own home and you wanted to ensure that you aren't a burden to your family. I'd like to customize or personalize a plan for you that will allow you to receive care in your own home. That's a way. We know that according to Genworth's own statistics that we've seen, and they've got some pretty good empirical data over the last 37 years, is that 75% of individuals start their claim at home and about the same number of percentage-wise in their claim at home. Home and wanting to be home and stay in the home, we know is very, very important. And that is actually supported by some additional statistics that I want to share with you in the next visual. And so when we start looking at focusing on that, we know that 80% of long-term care is provided at home. We know that the percentage of claimants receiving home care is about 44%, 35% percentage of claimants receiving care in assisted living facilities, and 21% of individuals that actually end up needing that skilled supervision and needing the nursing home. So those are numbers. I'm not saying that you have to share. They're more for your internal to help support this aspect that home and community care is really where it's at, and that's where people want to be. So keep it simple. How much, some decisions that you'll need to make. How much should the plan pay? That's, again, finding that compromise so that you can find out how much they want to retain as it relates to the risk, how much they want to transfer. Find out how long the plan should last. If they have a history of Alzheimer's in their family, then you want to be talking to them maybe about a plan that could last longer than the typical plan that we see today, plan design that we see today, which is about a 3-year plan. We seem to sell more of the 3-year plans than anything else. Again, when do you want the plan to begin paying? This is the waiting period of the deductible. You can help them to see that maybe with another parallel discussion about homeowners insurance or auto insurance to get them to see how deductibles actually work. How would you like the plan? How would you like the plan to grow with inflation? I like to say, how fast do you want your plan to increase? And of course, we know today in plan design we have to be very careful, and we have to get very creative when we're using inflation because of that being a very significant cost to most of the long-term care plans today. So keep it simple and avoid some of the common mistakes. One of the most common mistakes is that people who like to spend too much time educating and describing too many proposals, benefits, and riders, which leads the client to being confused and needing time to think about it because they want to think about what you just said. So I learned many, many years ago as a young individual starting out in this business, a mentor taught me this phrase, and I've used it throughout my career as a reminder when I'm actually working to provide a solution. And it goes like this: multiplying words divide attention. Multiplying options can divide interest. So be very careful. It's okay to show and to lay out several options, but make sure that you're actually going to lead with what you think is going to be the fix for their particular situation, the best appropriate solution. So as we've looked at that and you're presenting, this is just one suggestion. Everyone has a little bit style differences, but you can, in finding that affordability where it's going to live, because right now today in plan design we know how important it is. You can maybe talk this conceptually, and then that there's different ways that you can design a plan. As far as you can skinny down certain benefits, as far as the coverage, you can increase certain coverages to make the plan last longer. And then what you can do is you can back into having talked this back into where their budget is, and then find the most appropriate solution based on what they're telling you is their affordability. That to me is where a big change has happened in our business, where people become more logical in the way that they have determined what is going to be a plan design that's going to be best for them. Yes, emotion still is a part of long-term care sales and the sales process, but I think logic and people identifying that they recognize the cost and where care costs are going, they also recognize that premiums can be a little bit more today than they were certainly some years back. All of us have seen those changes as well. So finding the way to fund it, help them to see and discuss different opportunities that that they may have based on your relationship with that client. You may get more involved in this if you are certainly a financial advisor that does more holistic planning, and you may be more aware of their investments and assets and cash flow. If not, you basically can talk in general terms about where the dollars would come from to actually provide for these particular premiums. And you have to make sure that, designing the right plan means it has to be sustainable, and you also have to let them know that, if things were to change in the future and these premiums were to change, would you still be able to sustain that particular commitment? Helping people on the front end to see how they will fund it is, I think, very, very important, and it's certainly been a big moving target for many of us as we've seen the dramatic changes in the premiums. So, having come full circle in our discussion, let me give you some takeaways. And one of the great takeaways is this. It's a little quote that I'd like to conclude with on this as we open it up to questions. That remember, even after we do all that we can do, we've established rapport, we've created the need, and we've felt as though we've persuaded to the best of our ability, ultimately, a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. Long-term care is not a product, unlike others within the financial world, that people will just readily do something against their will. They recognize that this is a commitment, an ongoing commitment to a premium obligation, and as such, sometimes even when we do our best, we're not going to get everyone to buy in, no matter how good we feel we are. That's just the nature of our business. Don't get discouraged. Realize that our business is a business of seeing as many folks that we can see, whether it's through webinars or face-to-face, no matter how you market your business. This is a numbers game still that we have to tell our story the more, realizing not everyone is either going to qualify health-wise or is going to recognize and move forward with a long-term care plan. So Dave, having said all that, we want to thank everyone for being on the webinar and hope that this very simple, straightforward track will give our agents a different takeaway as it relates to what they can use and incorporate some or all of what you've seen today. And appreciate your time, and Dave, appreciate you inviting me in again to be part of this this conversation. Dave, do we have any questions?
Dave, can we get a copy of this presentation? Or Dennis, can we get a copy of this presentation?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Dave, is that something you can facilitate for the folks? I don't know if we've, Dave, yes, the answer to that question is yes.
Okay. Do we need to call in, or is it just going to be sent out to everybody?
Well, typically, we record the webinars and we make them available on our website, but when there is some additional visuals that people would like, that would be best probably to email Dave or to simply call in, and Dave can make that available. I won't speak for him, but that's Dave, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
is it
Dave?
possible that going in the future we can go back to the VIOP on the go to the meeting. It's a little cumbersome to have to be on audio on a phone, as well as because Webinar does a really good job on their VIOP, and it's a lot easier to ask questions too.
Okay, we'll look into that for future webinars. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, on your screen now, you should see our phone number. You should see the link to get on our website. We developed a really cool little long-term care quoting tool on our website if you have access to it, which we hope you do. If you do not have access to log in, let us know. We'll get you all set up. So please give us a call on that. This whole presentation today, as far as showing the statistics, as far as people wanting to stay home as long as possible, plays right into the Mutual of Omaha story with the hybrid cash component. No product out there is as strong as the Mutual product right now for allowing people to stay home with the right level of service as possible, with the ability to private hire off Craigslist or pay family members or friends to take care of you. No one else offers the flexibility of the Mutual of Omaha chassis right now.
And we can incorporate what Dave is indicating, when we're talking about staying at home, and you hear the objections because they always happen. My friends or family will take care of me. It's a perfect opportunity to be proactive, and in that same conversation, talk about the fact that there's an ability to provide a cash benefit. Dave's absolutely correct. We see it all the time, and those that are using that cash story are having tremendous success because we know that people really do feel like they have a plan. That's their friends and family. Well, now they can actually have a plan that where the family can get paid as well.
Very good. Dennis, thanks again for a wonderful presentation. Hope everybody got a couple of new ideas they can perhaps incorporate in your practice. Thanks again for taking the time to join us, and we're going to give you guys a break next week. No webinars next week, so happy Thanksgiving to all, and we'll catch up to you in December. Thanks again. Thanks again, Dennis.
You bet. Thank you, Dave.